How do you jam like Jerry Garcia if you're not sure what tactics he used to create such amazing solos? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the blueprint for what they are. You'll find out how his approach was less improvised than you might think, how to apply it to your next jam, and finally, how one of his oldest tactics allowed him to create a memorable jam every time. So just for an example, we're going to be using the jam section from Mississippi Half Step, and it's real easy. It is just A to D, right? So you may think, oh, it's the key of A. It's close. It uses a mode called A Mixolydian, and if you don't know what that is, it's like the major scale with a flatted seventh instead of a major seventh. So that is like the Grateful Dead sound, you know. So many, I'd say 80% at least of their jams revolve around a Mixolydian mode. So I'm going to do everything up here too, because this is just a great Jerry spot. And you know, when I was starting out, I always kind of would practice here and I'd kind of work my way up, and then things would get kind of foggy over here. But it's great to just start out up here. You know, this is just a great area. Just get familiar with it. So if you want to play Mixolydian here, you've got it all right here, right? So here it is, all in this hand position. And then there is our A right there, or you can play A like this right here. So that is it right there. So knowing that, it's going to get you some good mileage, but you know, knowing what mode a jam is, you know, can really open things up. A lot of different sounds for you, but that's just the start, you know. And if it's all you focused on, eventually things would get super boring. So this is another way that Jerry would get more specific with his note choices. So what was I doing? But I was just using a pentatonic scale for each chord. So A major pentatonic for A, D major pentatonic for D. Both of them are within the overall mode. So here it is again, you know, A Mixolydian. Right? And if we now just take away two notes, because the pentatonic is a 5-note scale, we now have this. Right? And then for D, we have this. Right? So on A, you play the A. On D, you play the D. And what that does is it makes things more melodic. You're now getting connected to the chords. And let's see if we can take this idea to another further step and make things even more melodic. So all I was doing there was just playing notes of the chords, the arpeggio, right? So for A, just playing the notes that are in the A chord. For D, just the notes that are in the D chord, which there are just 3 notes each. So we started off with 7 notes with the mode, and then we whittled it down to 5 and then 3. And if you want to think about all the notes, there's 12. So you got all 12 notes, you can use them. Then we got 7, 5, 3. We're whittling it down and getting more specific and connecting to the chords. And this is really what melodies just focus on a lot of, is just notes that are in chords. It hangs on it. So by doing this, you become much more melodic. Let's see how it looks here. If you've got the pentatonic, right? A pentatonic here. Then we take out 2 notes, and now we have just these notes here. Right? And then for D, D major pentatonic. Then take out 2 notes, and we have just the root 3rd and 5th. And And, you know, you don't even need to know all of these two. You know, I was playing my example. I was just focused, like, you know, just on 2 or 3 notes for each. And that's all you really need to kind of just connect with the chords and gets outside of just sounding like you're kind of playing with scale, which can sound great again, but it's not as connected to kind of what's going on with the chords and kind of a not as higher level of being musical, you know, and stuff. And so this next step is where you're really going to hear the biggest difference so far. So what I was doing here was I was playing a scale tone into a chord tone. And what that does is it creates some tension and then it gets resolved when you're on the chord tone. So if you're thinking again, like, you know, A, major notes right here, here's the overall scale, like this note right here, the D, that is not in the A chord, but it's in the overall mode. So I was playing that and then going to a C sharp, which is the major third of A. So you get that tension, release it. And then, you know, if you go back to it when the D happens, that's a chord tone. But you could go down, you could go up to here and then go down there. But my example, when I went over here, played this, there's scale tone, and then A, which is the 5th of D. So that's a chord tone. So scale tone, chord tone. So scale, chord, make it to the D, scale, chord tone. That's just going right down the scale, right? So that is something that really gives you a lot more control so that you're not just playing around the scale, but you're being much more intentional. And when you do this, you know, maybe very conscious of it at first, but you just kind of keep at it like an exercise, and it starts to become very intuitive, and you start doing these things without thinking about it. You just kind of hear it in your head, you feel it. Your fingers just play it, and it creates so much more, you know, tension and resolution, and just making things more exciting, right? And learning all the tactics that we've gone over so far is great, but there's even more to jamming with a band than just knowing certain musical tactics. So check out my free jam survival guide to get even further into navigating jamming with others. You can just click on the link in the description down below to get it right now. So what I was doing was adding in chromatics, and a lot of people that, you know, get really into Jerry's playing, you know, are very aware of it and maybe use it themselves, but don't necessarily know why he would do it. And that is because it was another way of adding tension and release, and also just a certain kind of, you know, vibe to the playing. It added like a little bit of playfulness and kind of quirkiness that's uniquely, you know, him, you know, his unique way of doing it. But, you know, when you play, again, that example of the scale tone to a chord tone, but if you do it like this right here, C sharp, that, you know, you call that a chromatic, like it's just a, you know, fancy name saying, you know, like all the notes or the notes outside of the key you're in and things. So it's outside of the key, creates even more tension and can resolve it. So I could go one note to a chord tone, or I could go 2 or 3. But just adding those chromatics in, not just randomly, but in specific ways where you're, again, targeting those chord tones, that's going to be really that approach that he did all the time, and another way to take things even further out with tension and, you know, releasing it. But it's not all about what notes Jerry played, but also how he played it. So it's not just about the note choices he did, but how he played things. And there's so many things he would do about how he would shape the notes. But bending is a huge one. So rather than, say, playing this C sharp here, but bending up to it instead and releasing, and bending even outside of the key, that chromatic stuff, and bending to those chord tones huge part of his sound. So make sure you add lots of bends and don't be afraid to bend in unconventional ways. Use your first finger, second finger, stuff that people don't often do. Now, this next step is, I think, the most important by far, and it's also the most overlooked. It's the best way to create like a real memorable jam that the listener will just get stuck in their head. So I was just playing a theme there, and this is one that I actually took from a version. I think it was some show from '74. I forget which one it was, but it doesn't really matter. It's like the idea is having a clear theme, so you could just throw all these other steps out the window, but just take 2 or 3 notes and have a clear idea, a little melody, a theme they keep repeating. And that is what's going to get stuck in people's head. They don't care about the flashy stuff as much as just hearing something that's going to be real memorable. And you can kind of, build on that and get real flashy and do all the fancy scale stuff, after you've got that theme. Or you end your jam with a theme, or you do both. You can make it come full circle. But don't just jam in the way that's just grabbing a scale and going and do whatever. These are different little tactics that he would do to create very memorable jams. And I've learned so much from how Jerry Garcia approached jamming, but he also played such amazing solos that were very short and so sweet. So check out this video here where I show you what I learned after transcribing 30 of his solos and how you can use it to improve your playing as well.